Okay, welcome everyone to one more episode of Tactical Periodisation Moments. That's what we call it. On each episode, we invite one coach and talk for about 30 minutes with him or her. It can be a current student of ours, of our professional master, a former student, or any coach we feel that suits this program. Uh, Today, we are very happy to announce Abdulla Almuqahwi. I'm sorry if this is not the correct way to say it.
Right.
I hope so it is. From Hamad Town, Bahrain, who is our current student of the second edition of the Professional Master. We are very honored to have you in our show, and thank you for accepting this invitation, of course. I would start by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your path as a coach, the culture that you're in, and the state of football in Bahrain.
Hi, Felipe. Thank you for the very kind words. I'm honored to be here. I'm very excited, and I hope that it's going to be a good listen for everybody listening. And I hope everyone is safe and having a nice, holidays. Um, First of all, my name is Abdullah Almuqahwi. As you said, it was perfect. I'm 30 years old. I'm a football coach and analyst, currently living and from Bahrain. My path as a coach is not your regular, or average a path for a coach in football, not just in Bahrain but worldwide, because I've never played the game professionally. But I had a very big connection to the game since I was probably 5 years old. I saw it in my dad how he followed his teams. He would wake up at the middle of the night to watch a game at that time. So it cannot be. I mean, I can. It cannot be anything other than um, infectious. So for me, it was very influencing and influenced my connection to the game. So I started to follow football, and since I was very little, I had a unique interest in the game because I remember I had and I still have a notebook that I used to keep every football player that I find in a magazine or newspaper, whether it's the Panini stickers or just your regular magazines. I would put the name of the player, write any information that I could collect, where he plays, which position, blah blah blah, and I still have it with me. So I had this unique view to the game, and then I started to play it in a club, but I could not continue because of my studies. But I insisted to be connected to the game, and I think in my last years of teenage years, or probably the beginning of 20s, I had this clear image of what I wanted to be, and I wanted to be a football coach. I was trying to act like a coach. I would stand up in front of the mirror, try to be animated. So it was very clear for me. I wanted that, so I started to work on that dream, and it's been a long ride. It's been 10 years of education. It was not easy because I did not have a clear path for me. I had this misconception that because I did not play the game, I could not train it or I could not coach it. But for me, it was something positive, if anything, because it drove me to study better, learn better, and try to be more in depth and be as objective as I can in my information or my views to the game. So yeah, that unique path of mine allowed me to become the coach who I am today, and that's something that I make sure to mention to everyone before I start working with them. It's something that I take great pride in, and I learned to keep it as a shield that would protect me from any prejudice or misconception. So yeah, it's been fantastic, and incidentally, this unique path um, led me to where I am today and in this masters, believe it or not, because currently I'm a football coach with the Bahrain Football Association. I'm a coach and an analyst of the Bahrain Under 23 team. I worked with the under 19 and I worked with the under 16, and I had a very short experience with the first team as well. So I am where I am. I've always dreamt to be. and it's just something that proves to myself and to many others that no one can tell you that you cannot be what you want to be if you have it very clear, and if you want to work harder than anyone in the room. I am where I want to be, and I want to continue learning, growing, because I believe that this is a continuous pathway. So yeah, this is in a nutshell my very, very early beginning to where I am today as a coach.
Well, thank you. It seems like that you are a very well objective driven coach, and with a lot of educational concerns. Tell me about the state of football in Bahrain. How is it organized?
Um, in Bahrain, you have to first be aware that it's not a full professional, platform. So the whole industry, the whole organization is not based on a purely professional level of the game. So we have a semi-professional leagues and semi-professional players that I think a very short while ago were amateurs as well. So now it's getting towards a better perspective or a better regulation where everyone starting to become a little bit more professional than amateur. I had a I was very connected to the game as a fan when I was young here, but I lost that appetite because of the state of organization. I got disconnected from the game. Even my dreams were not that built around Bahrain. I wanted to become a coach abroad. I wanted to go to Europe. I wanted to start there. I wanted to be in a much better structured environment. But after 10 years, I got the chance to work. I had an offer that I could not refuse to work with the national teams. And that's my starting point, by the way. I've never worked with a club before, never worked with any other team. So my first experience was the national team. So my opinion is a little bit biased because I'm watching the elite level in Bahrain. In my opinion, it's going towards a better direction. There is a great interest from the government and from the leadership in trying to make Bahraini football competitive and starting to achieve better results as a first team and generate more better and more competent players across the grassroots. We have to also remember that Bahrain is a pioneer in football and in sports in the region because it was the starting point of football. It was where everything started in the region. So we take great pride in that, and we try to build on that. So right now, I can see that there are more, let's say, how can you say, like European coaches coming to the country. So they instill even more competency. They instill more professionalism. Players are now more educated, more exposed to better coaching, and that really helps. But we still have a long while uh, for us to be able to catch up with countries in the region and worldwide. But I think it's getting to a better pathway than it was a couple of years ago.
Okay. In your national team, do you have players that play abroad, or you have all of them play domestically?
You mean in the grassroots levels or in the first team?
In the first team.
We have a couple of players playing abroad. We have one player, Abdulla Yusuf, is playing in the Czech Republic League. So he was playing Europa League, Champions League as well. His name's Abdullah Yusuf Hilal. We have a couple others playing in regional leagues. So United Arab Emirates. We have players in Kuwait. So I think that's about it. But in terms of playing abroad in Europe, couple of guys went to have trials, did not continue for whatever reasons. But currently, I think one player playing in Europe and the others playing in either regional or domestic leagues.
Okay. So, do you feel that there were many differences between coaching national team and a club concerning, for instance, if you chose tactical periodization as a methodology, because in national teams you have players coming from different clubs in different states, you know, with different ideas, and in a club you have a chance to uh, start or continue a process in your game idea and then continue it in time. What do you think are the main differences between those two kinds of coaching?
Um, I think it's a challenge, as you said, because working in a national team demands different type of work, and it's much more limited than working with a club where you can control or you can be you can oversee um, uh, much more things with much more details. Uh, in a national team setup, we can only work in the FIFA days, for example, and that's something that limits our approach. But we try to instill our game idea. We try to instill the approach that we would like to take. But again, I'm working right now. I'm not the head coach. I'm the coach, so I don't necessarily control the or have influence over the approach that we would like to take. But individually, I try to educate the players if I have the chance, or I try to have group discussions, private discussions with the coaches to try to push some of the ideas, not because it's better or worse, but because I believe that it's something that would be helpful. But as you said, we have a problem controlling the loads sometimes, controlling the lifestyle of the players, controlling the way they train and the nature of their training. So basically, we have to work with what we have in hand, and we have to take it from there. So it's much more about adapting to the reality than trying to work in an ideal situation, especially if you're working in a amateur leagues or semi-professional leagues, because you don't really know the level of coaching that the players are exposed to in their clubs, and you don't really know how are they trying to live their lives, or how are they trying to manage their lives when they are far away from you. So it's definitely a factor that dictates how our workflow goes. But I think the bottom line is adaptation. We have to look at it from an area of strength and try to build on that, not in spite of that.
Right. Okay. Well, a lot of questions come to my mind right now. And I just hope we have
Sure.
time and you have patience for this. Being pioneers in football in that area, do you feel like you have, or you or the head coach or the head coaches have freedom of choice, methodologically, I mean, or is there a style of play that you feel like you have to follow?
Not at all. No, actually, we have a very modern and open-minded leadership. So the people working at the BFA are always willing to engage and discuss what we have to bring in. Uh, but we also have a technical director, and we have a teams manager, and these two roles, these two these people are always the people that are taking the decisions in terms of the identity they want to establish as a BFA and the style of play they want to seek, and that dictates how they recruit their coaches. So right now, we're working under a Portuguese staff, believe it or not. It's a full Portuguese team that worked with the first team, but we had a couple of coaches working in the you know youth levels as well. I was working with a Portuguese coach with the under 23 team, and everything right now is built on the game model that they're trying to instill within the national teams. And in their work, they're not working with the tactical periodization approach 100%, but they take a lot of it in their work. And I had big discussions with them. And prior to joining the masters, I had the opportunity to sit down with the under 23 coach, who was very kind to sit down with me and tell me everything he knows about the theory and the approach. And I can see that it's something that they're working on, because when they first came into the national team in Bahrain, one of the first things that they've done is that they took a full preseason with the national team in Europe. And instead of working on the fitness and team preparation in terms of physicality, they tried to push their principles. So they focused on the principles of play. They changed the way that players are exposed to the warm-ups, for example. They changed the way the players were exposed to the double sessions, for example. So for a lot of people, especially people that have no clue what's going on, it was something uh, radical and new, and it was something risky. But then, luckily, unfortunately, the team, the staff managed to win the first prize in the history of Bahrain a couple of months after that preseason, or I think 2 months or 1 month or something. And then they followed that with another victory in one of the most historical competitions in the region here, a competition that's almost 50 years old, and Bahrain started that competition but never won it. So when they won it, you know how it works. Everything was magic, and suddenly everything was making sense to a lot of people, and everybody started to ask, oh, so what are they doing, and why are they doing like that? Maybe we could do something like that. So for me, it was amazing to watch it unfold in front of me, because I had this mindset of building your game model and pushing your game idea and trying to make the game the central reference for everything that you do with your work with the players. So to watch them focus on their game principles and their methodology of training, and even the way they speak to the players, the way they lead the camp, the way they manage the structure of everything, you could see without any shadow of doubt that everything was driven by the game identity. So identity was the pillar of everything, and to me it was something very refreshing. So that approach trickled down to the youth teams with various levels of success, because it's one thing to have a game idea, and it's another thing to have your game idea, right? So it was more or less different coaches with no understanding of the reason why they're doing these things, started to do what they've been told to do, and suddenly it does not work. So I know it's not the problem of the method as much as the context, the application of the method. And as the professor says, in most cases, it's the dose, it's not the method, it's the dose and the way we try to do things. So for me, it was just fantastic to watch it with the positives and negatives, because as a young coach, I was learning, trying to understand, okay, hold on, why did it not work here, but it's worked here? So, and I remember clearly in these two competitions, uh, the head coach of the first team made a decision to rotate the team completely. So with each game, they had, I think, not more than 3 days of rest, sometimes two. So he made this decision to work to play with different teams in different games. So the team that started the semi-final was different than the team that started the final. And everybody was saying, "No, no, he's crazy. Now, what he's doing." I'm speaking from the fans' perspective. Even for coaches, it was something very unique. And for me, it was an experiment, to watch it. And then when they won, everybody started to praise them. They said they won because of that, not in spite of it. And here I remember Marcelo Bielsa once said that media would kill you with something and would praise you for the same thing if you win with it. So I was laughing because I knew that after a while they'll do the same thing, but they'll lose. And that happened in the Arab Cup now. They did not qualify from the group stages and they followed more or less the same approach. And everybody started to say, oh, now you see that it was a fluke and it was not supposed to be happening in football. So this is the struggle, the industry as coaches and fans is not educated enough to understand the reasons behind the variation of methodologies used in football. To me, nothing is wrong and nothing is right. It's just about context.
Yes, for us also. You were talking about the success in the way of seeing the practice and the training, and I'm guessing that the players are also very receptive to new ideas. And if that happens, it makes the coaches work a lot easier, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's not just one thing that goes on there. It's several things that come together and make it a success, right? You talked about the kids. You talked about the kids and the grassroots. And I would also love to have some time. We have 10 minutes left, more or less, to talk about also the coaches' education in Bahrain. But first, I'm really curious about the kids and the generations to come. How do you see it? Do you see kids playing everywhere? Or do you see kids playing in academies and clubs? Or just that? How do you see it? How do you see the next generations?
Okay, that's a very interesting topic for me because at the moment and as part of the masters of tactical periodization, I'm preparing a research. I've been working on it. It's the title of the research is how it's not the final title, but it's something like how a lack of tactical culture is hindering the progress of the individuals in Bahrain. And I've been investigating through my own personal opinions and experiences working in football in Bahrain, trying to understand and outline the reasons why I think players are not becoming what we want them to become. But I'm not going to discuss the research now, but I'm going to highlight two main points for me that are, in my opinion, not allowing this to happen. First, to answer your question, I think that the level that is upcoming now is not as good as it used to be. Okay. And you would think, okay, but you said that the industry is getting better. So how come players are not becoming better? And I think this, what do you call it? Like the opposite direction
Yeah.
of these two answers. Yeah.
It's
Is actually,
paradox.
what do you call it?
Paradox, maybe.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was looking for that. This paradox is works for me. It makes sense perfectly because it's one thing to improve the structure to try to educate the coaches better, but it's another thing when your application is not making the players become better, but it's actually limiting them to get worse. Because we intervene and we influence them in a way that limits their potential. Before, players were exposed to the streets much more than now. Bahrain is a small country, so the lands are not available anymore. When I was a kid, I could have a kick around in a sand pitch and then go play on a concrete and then play on grass and then go home probably at 7 p.m. and then I'll be knackered, sleep, go to school, play again, and so on. So I had this experience of trying. I had the experience to trial and error, to try something and then see if it works. I had concepts like differential learning that was happening to me without me realizing. I had the most of the theories that we talk about as coaches now. It was something that was happening to us without us being conscious about it because we did this to ourselves. Now this is gone because kids, if they want to play football now, they have to rent a pitch that would cost them something around minimum of 20 BD for 1 hour, which is roughly something like $60 an hour. And for kids, $60 is something crazy, you know? So they lost that. They lost the freedom to go outside and play in schools as well. So in schools, football is structured as well. So we think that we're getting better at coaching football, but we're actually better off. I think, in my opinion, one of the most or one of the best coaching advices that I could give to anyone is sometimes it's better not to do anything. You know, it's just to watch them, to allow them to emerge, to allow them to interact, and to see it happening. I think as coaches, our first priority should be to prepare the environment that would allow them to flourish, not to hammer them with constraints, with theories, with techniques or advices that would let them not enjoy the game anymore. So it became much more structured. It became much more professional, even for young guys. And I think that is not okay. Lastly, the level of coach education is not up to the standards. So coaches think that they're getting the best education and they go and they apply it exactly as they've been told. And that creates a big gap between what the BFA or what the people in charge think that the coaches are capable to do and what the reality is actually, uh, reflecting. So I think the best way to grow as a coach is to watch and then to educate yourself by yourself, not just depending on coaching courses, because it's just a license. You can drive a car without a license and be a fantastic driver because you've crashed your car probably 3 or 4 times before. But you can have your driving license and be like, sorry for the word, but a shit driver, you know? So the dependence on the licenses is also not allowing coaches to grow, in my opinion.
Yes, I see that you are very sensitive to this subject. I am also because I'm always trying to see how a couple of actions can change a culture in the future, and where do they lead a culture to when you change or when you see things in a different way. Well, it can be quite a struggle. Uh, well, just to finish this, well, believe me, I had at least 9 more questions. It's not possible. But just to finish this, what are your thoughts about the professional master that you started some months ago, and how do you see it so far?
First of all, this is something I wanted to say at the beginning of the conversation, but when I start talking, I sometimes lose sense of where I was
Yes.
going. So actually, I when I was studying about the game, it was not just studying courses and just traveling for courses. It was not just that. It was watching a lot of games. So that was the first thing that made me become at least competent when I try to talk about the game, is because I watched a lot of football games. But when I was watching the games, I had an approach in my mind that I thought I was actually crazy. So I did not share it with anyone. But my approach was an approach where the further I went away from football, the better I became at understanding football. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I would be watching, for example, an artist, and then the artist would be speaking about how how he stroke his brush, and then that would be something that I would like. Okay, I try to link it to the game somehow, and then I would be sitting and watching a musician talking about the creative process, and then for me it was something that would allow me to understand the creative process for a football player or a football coach as well. So I always had this analog based uh, approach where I would try to link two different or three different industries together to allow me to understand the game and the complexity of the game better. And I had also an opinion where I was saying to myself, if I could understand the core nature of what a football game really is, if it's taken away, if you take everything away from a football game, all the hype, all the commercialism, everything, and you just put it down as a simple game with its rules, you have to understand its nature, and then from there you can start to build your understanding. So I was saying to myself, what is the nature of the game? And the more I thought about it, I ended up with chaos. And then the more I think about it, I was going to, okay, maybe it's not chaos, it's organized chaos. And then the further I go, I got to a point where my conclusion was complex. And that was the starting point of everything. From there, I came across an article, I think 5 years ago or something, about tactical periodization. And it was, if you read a word and you think it's just a fad, like something that people use because it's cool to be used. So I read tactical periodization a couple of times, and I was actually interested. What is that? Why are people talking about it? I read that article and I was like, that's actually the closest thing I've ever read that describes the way I looked at the game, you know? And I suddenly said, maybe it's what I should be investigating more. And then a couple of years later, I came across another article and it was about the professor. And I was actually amazed. I felt like this was someone that was talking to me. Like the younger me would be crazy if he knew that someone was thinking the same, like in the same direction. Obviously, not the same depth, but just the same direction. So when I had that interest, I went for the Portuguese coaches and I asked them, I read this and this and this and this, but I want a real life advice. I don't want something in an article. I want someone that lived with people that use that or seen it in action. And they've all said amazing things, very positive things, and they've encouraged me to take that course. And from that, as they say, the rest is history. That now uh, you can't imagine how glad I am. It's like the best investment I've made to myself in my journey as a coach, not just because of the depth and level of conversations, but also because the people that I'm studying with and the interaction that happens on a daily basis, for me, it's something like a reference. I see people that are working in the highest level using the same methods, and they speak about it with passion, with understanding, with depth. But the thing that I respect the most, Felipe, is people are not trying to push it as an agenda. You know, they're not trying to say it's the best thing since bread and butter. not not everyone is saying that. People are saying it's one way of work that we prefer, but you can work in a different way. And to me, it opened up everything to me to be receptive of the theory. So yeah, it's just fantastic, Felipe, and I'm very very thankful.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for your words. And also, thank you for your time and availability. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I really hope to see you soon. Keep safe, you and your whole family, of course. And it was a pleasure, Abdullah.
Thank you,
Thank you
Felipe.
so much.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for your time and for the invitation. I hope it was not boring, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you guys soon as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye
Happy
bye. See you
holidays.
soon.
See you
Bye
soon.
bye.
Bye.